Hell, it could even be our friendly bartender!
And that, dear viewers, is the reason why the graphic for the Awfully Good drinking game has John Travolta as Churl photoshopped to be your friendly bartender. Jesse Shade here for Awfully Good Movies on behalf of the JoBlo YouTube network, and welcome to the first of a recurring series of special episodes of Awfully Good Movies that we're planning to drop amongst our usual bad movie reviews, where instead of reviewing a bad movie with drinking games and all that jazz, I'll be taking a humorous look at the arduous production process that led to some of these movies being so bad in the first place. Since certain bad movies out there have already been joked about and riffed to death. For example, in the case of Battlefield Earth, what could I joke about that hasn't already been joked about in the 25 years since its disastrous release? Riff tracks, double toasted, the cinema snob, the nostalgia critic, they have all excellently mined this movie for comedic gold, as it is. So instead, we're going to focus on the fascinating backstory of how Battlefield Earth came to be both a bad movie classic and a bad omen of things to come for the once untouchable career of John Travolta. So get your crap lousy rat brains out of the trenches and into the battlefield for this Satan-filled episode of Awfully Good Movies. It is the year 1982 AD. L. Ron Hubbard, once known as a writer of pulp sci-fi and fantasy, has been ruling over thousands of followers with a dubious set of religious beliefs known as Scientology. As they would do with countless other followers across the decades, the Scientologists mine their rich followers' pockets and teleport the money to Hubbard's tax-sheltered bank accounts. And the money from one follower in particular, mega-hit movie star John Travolta, is the largest and most valuable source of income of all. But amidst several lawsuits and investigations towards his church, Hubbard's dwindling health has him fighting to stay alive. Hiding out on his houseboat from the authorities, LRH and the Church of Scientology are on the verge of extinction.
If we don't take back our planet, the last of humanity becomes extinct.
That is until Hubbard would return to the sci-fi genre with an 800-plus page opus titled Battlefield Earth, a saga of the year 3000, which thanks in part to Hubbard's followers buying several copies each at their local bookstores, lands it atop many bestseller lists and makes Hubbard a household name. And with John Travolta becoming a close friend to his reclusive leader ever since joining the church in 1975, Hubbard sends an autographed copy to John Travolta of Battlefield Earth in the hopes that one day he could get it made into an epic movie along the lines of such recent sci-fi fare as Close Encounters of the Third Kind and the Star Wars trilogy. And 18 years later, Travolta would honor his late friend and prophet by starring and producing in a movie that was indeed as big a cinematic genre landmark as Star Wars was, but not in a good way.
Oh! Crap lousy ceiling!
Between its god-awful reviews, terrible box office, and all the jokes made at its expense by talk show hosts and internet critics, Battlefield Earth has become as much of a shorthand term for terrible movies as Uwe Boll's filmography, The Room, or Manos: The Hands of Fate, even with the backing of a major studio that later found itself in as much legal hot water as the Church of Scientology itself. And the story of its production is as much of an unintentional comedy of errors and ego as the actual film. So let us blow the dome on how Battlefield Earth got made and held up as a bad movie classic after a quarter of a century, with a long way to go before we reach the actual year 3000. Thankfully, I could pass that time with episodes of Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Lousy year 3000. What have you ever done for us?
Oh, yes.
Hubbard had plans for his book to hit the big screen right out of the gate, as he published at the same time as the novel an album called Space Jazz, which was marketed as the only original soundtrack ever produced for a book before it becomes a movie, but sadly would not be the soundtrack for the actual movie. So the film rights would be sold in 1983 by the church's literary agency Author Services Incorporated to the LA-based production company Salem Productions, envisioning this lengthy tome as a two-film duology for each half of the book, much like Denis Villeneuve's recent adaptation of Dune.
Piece of cake, piece of cake, piece of cake, piece of cake.
The next year, they held auditions in Denver, Colorado, and enlisted Oscar-nominated film noir screenwriter Abraham Polanski and veteran British director Ken Anakin to make a breakdown of the movie before production would start in 1985, with the unmade film already being advertised in newspapers with a nationwide contest. First prize was an all-expense-paid trip to the film's production in lovely Denver, Colorado. Second prize was a paid walk-on role in the movie.
Third prize is you're fired.
And church officials would even erect on Hollywood Boulevard a 30-foot inflatable figure of the book's alien villain, Turl the Cyclo.
A monster! A beast! Yeah!
Looking less like Travolta did in the movie, and more like a hazmat-suited Marty McFly. Sadly, it was all for naught before the production would collapse in 1986, the same year that L. Ron Hubbard passed away at age 74 from a stroke. And thus the battle for Battlefield was seemingly lost. Yet the war would soon begin in late 1995, as John Travolta was atop the A-list once again for his award-winning performances as mobsters in both Pulp Fiction and Get Shorty. And the newly in-demand actor would ask of his longtime manager and co-producer Jonathan Crane, quote, "If we can't do the things now that we want to do, what good is the power? Let's test it and try to get the things done that we believe in."
That's a bold statement.
So Author Services and Salem Productions were back in business with both Fox and MGM, with screenwriter J.D. Shapiro of Robin Hood Men in Tights hired to adapt the script, and Travolta touted to play the young, athletic man-animal who rebels against his alien overlords, Johnny Goodboy Tyler.
Is that a stupid name, or...?
Despite Johnny Goodboy Travolta no longer being young or athletic himself. But even with Travolta's name attached and Shapiro fired by executives for refusing to cut key aspects of his screenplay, both Fox and MGM thought that the $100 million project was too risky, as it was based on a book that felt way out of date compared to modern-day science fiction, and was associated with a controversial church, which would keep many viewers from buying a ticket. Yet still, Travolta persisted, and soon would find help from a new studio led by a self-made immigrant entrepreneur with plenty of gold to be mined.
The old Cyclo's gone completely insane.
Indeed.
After Elie Samaha came to New York City in 1975 to flee from the civil war in his home country of Lebanon, he would use his business acumen to move to LA and open a dry cleaning business in 1984, as well as the famed Roxbury Club in 1989. Many of whose famous clients taught Elie a thing or two about how the movie business works.
Production equals profits.
So by the late 90s, he had launched Franchise Pictures and made a production deal with Morgan Creek Productions, in association with Warner Brothers, based on the strength of the big-name stars he had enlisted by promising to make their passion projects rejected by the rest of Hollywood if they took reduced salaries, such as Sylvester Stallone with Driven, Bruce Willis with The Whole Nine Yards, Jack Nicholson with The Pledge, and of course John Travolta with Battlefield Earth. After he agreed to Samaha's offer of a salary far below his asking price and turned down a musical role as a New Jersey crooner in Gus Van Sant's unmade musical biopic Standing Room Only, to instead produce and star in his passion project.
I just want to do whatever serves the corporation best, sir.
Not as the heroic Johnny Goodboy, but rather as the villainous Turl, leader of the intergalactic Cyclos, who, in addition to being stupidly named for Hubbard's open disdain for psychotherapists, have enslaved the human race as cavemen the past 1,000 years to mine their planet for precious gold. Alongside a pre-Oscar Forrest Whitaker and Travolta's own wife and fellow Scientologist Kelly Preston as the least hideous among this alien race of Rob Zombie fans with gigantism. Travolta would lure unknown screenwriter Corey Mandel to rewrite the script, but his original choice for director, Quentin Tarantino, wisely said no. So thanks to some advice from none other than George Lucas, Travolta and company would hire his second unit director from Return of the Jedi and The Phantom Menace, Roger Christian, who had already proved himself several times as a solo film director. In fact, Travolta would claim to the press that this film, on the heels of Phantom Menace dominating the box office in summer '99, could be next summer's Star Wars. And not just because of the film's overuse of that trademarked Lucas wipe transition. Hell, he would go even further behind the scenes, claiming to J.D. Shapiro that this film would be the Schindler's List of science fiction.
The idea that everyone from Star Wars, all the top professionals wanted to be part of it, at first for no money. They were all as in love with the book as I was. Of course, with these surveys that were taken, it was, voted the favorite book of the century, in many. So,
yet little did he know that the final product would end up on no one's surveys for their favorite movie of the century. To cut the $100 million budget down to a lean $44 million, Elie Samaha would have the film shot overseas in Montreal using largely Canadian actors, particularly Saving Private Ryan breakout star Barry Pepper, now in Travolta's former role as Johnny Goodyear Blimp, which made this film the most expensive production to shoot in Canada up to that time, while cast and crew were fed heartily but cheaply thanks to Samaha's stake in a catering company.
Do you want lunch?
Yet try as Travolta did to heavily guard the set from snooping reporters, bad word of mouth was already building, for reasons far beyond the film's religious philosophies. First off, there was the look for Travolta and his cyclos, courtesy of Godzilla '98 creature designer Patrick Tatopoulos. Between the black leather Fat Elvis jumpsuit, the Predator dreadlocks, and the six-fingered claws that they have to awkwardly maneuver with, Turl does not strike so much fear as he does pity, especially since Travolta plays this alien baddie like he's an aristocratic British dandy.
Pathetic. You wouldn't last one day at the Academy.
Travolta claimed his performance would be the wickedest 9-foot alien you have ever seen in your life. But he's more like the gayest high school drama teacher you've ever had in your life. A needlessly arrogant Hanna-Barbera cartoon villain that this movie insists is the next Darth Vader, even though this entire story centers around him accidentally teaching these humans how to rise up against their alien overlords with Harrier jets that they somehow quickly learned to fly, all because they wanted to show these man-animals how much smarter they are than them. It's as if he and Forrest Whitaker were a live-action Kang and Kodos.
It's a joke.
Then there's the infamously tilted camera work that plagues next to most of the movie. A creative choice defended by director Roger Christian in the DVD commentary as trying to look like a comic strip.
It's comic strip. You have to interpret this film this way. It's what the book is.
Or rather, what I think he means to say, a comic book, much like the 60s Batman TV show. It's as headache-inducing for the audience as a pair of cheap 3D glasses. Between already having cheap-ass CGI and a filthy-looking cast of Burning Man attendees, it makes the film just that more unpleasant to look at. And though Forrest Whitaker and Barry Pepper really do try coming off way less silly than Travolta, the silly sci-fi pulp dialogue they're given to speak is a long way from Shakespeare, no matter how much Travolta is treating it like Shakespeare.
I was being trained to conquer galaxies.
Acting brilliant.
Yet still, Travolta was convinced he had a hit on his hands, while insisting to the press that no religious motivations were behind his sci-fi epic whatsoever.
whether it had to, the same writer as a philosophy that I like or not, this is a great book, and 6 million people know it.
Yet once he would see the film's epically disastrous reception, John would be wishing he'd made at least one prayer to Xenu. For their fall 1999 issue, Mean magazine would conduct an experiment among their readers who worked in the film industry by sending them a leaked copy of Corey Mandel's rewritten Battlefield Earth script with the fake title page, Dark Forces by Desmond Finch. And the readers' opinions were nothing short of brutal. A thoroughly silly plotline made more ludicrous by its ham-fisted dialogue and shallow characterizations. a completely predictable story with lack of originality, as entertaining as watching a fly breathe. Then there was its merchandising in the form of a toy line from Trendmasters, the profits from which would go towards the Scientology groups Narconon and Applied Scholastics.
So those corporate crapheads won't even know we stole it.
After all, what kid out there wouldn't want a tiny gay John Travolta doll yelling at them all the time?
Exterminate all man-animals at will!
Pathetic.
Yet Warner Brothers' $20 million ad campaign that had Travolta signing copies of the book for fans instead of doing interviews could not change how the audiences were reacting at the film's early screenings, either with derisive laughter towards the screen or walking out of the theater cursing the name of Xenu. Even the crowd at the film's premiere was so paltry, it had to be filled out with some of Travolta's fellow Scientologists, as well as, you guessed it, Sylvester Stallone. And just as many skeptical studio executives predicted, critics would tear this flick a whole new asshole. Namely, Roger Ebert predicting correctly that Battlefield Earth would become the punchline of jokes about bad movies for decades to come.
Damn right, rat brain. That's the first intelligent thing you've said yet.
With a weak number 2 opening at the box office that weekend, and only fell from there up against the second week of Ridley Scott's Gladiator, though it did far better than the underrated Norm Macdonald and Dave Chappelle comedy Screwed.
While you were still learning how to spell
Who cares?
David Miscavige, the mysterious leader of Scientology who was secretly micromanaging production, immediately threw Travolta and the movie under the bus after its failure while chatting with fellow acolyte Tom Cruise, who'd ironically told Warner Brothers that this movie was a bad idea.
Your powers of observation are simply startling.
While Elie Samaha raged in an interview that the critics were merely prejudiced against its star's beliefs, little knowing that Samaha would later be sued that year by his business partners for fraudulently overcharging them on their film's production costs, with Samaha ordered to pay them back a hefty $97 million and Franchise Pictures filing for bankruptcy in 2004. And to top it all off, Battlefield Earth would have itself a clean sweep at the Golden Raspberry Awards in 2001, with the most ever given to a movie until Adam Sandler's Jack and Jill, and all of Travolta's awards accepted at the ceremony by a talking turtle action figure.
Rat brain!
10 years later, writer J.D. Shapiro would go on to gladly attend the 2010 Razzies to personally accept the award for Worst Picture of the 2000s. As for John Travolta, he would have his longtime agent and co-producer fired, while his other movie that year, the lottery comedy Lucky Numbers, was delayed to the fall by Paramount to get the stench of Battlefield Earth off of Travolta's name, only for it to open even lower than Battlefield Earth. And though John has occasionally reached his old heights of stardom once again, he's mostly nowadays doing crap like Gotti, The Fanatic, and no short amount of direct-to-video slop, as well as coping with the tragic deaths of frequent co-stars Olivia Newton-John, Kirstie Alley, and of course his wife, Kelly Preston, to whose memory we dedicate this video with her immortal line of dialogue.
I am going to make you as happy as a baby cyclo on a straight diet of Grabango.
Watch your tongue.
Yet while other cast and crew members have publicly washed their hands of Battlefield Earth, Travolta was still openly proud of his cinematic disaster whenever reporters brought it up, claiming he took a big chance in breaking into a genre he had never done before, and that though the movie did gross $100 million after all when combined with DVD sales, he has no plans for a sequel, despite having clearly said in an earlier interview the second half would be ready the next year in 2001.
But we could only do the first 500 pages, so the second 500 would be a sequel.
And are you going to do that?
Yeah, next
For
year.
sure, it's positive.
Yeah, for next year, we'll tell the rest of the story.
You sure call that one, sir.
As if we needed both 9/11 and a Battlefield Earth sequel to happen in the same year. But clearly, it has been a hit on streaming, as Netflix recently uploaded it with the restored 3 minutes of deleted scenes they had taken out for its original home video release. And say what you will about his religious beliefs, but it's that lung-headed persistence in Travolta's vision that still puts Battlefield Earth right on par with an even older bad movie sci-fi classic from 1959, Ed Wood's Plan 9 from Outer Space, where another bunch of cheap-looking aliens also take over our planet to show up these stupid humans, only to reveal they are just as stupid as your average Earthling. It could just as easily be directed as a comedy, but Roger Christian directing it like it's supposed to be a serious sci-fi epic on par with those of his old boss George Lucas, whom Christian claims loved the movie at an early screening alongside the equally positive Quentin Tarantino, somehow makes it all that much funnier and somewhat applicable. So if any of you insane billionaires with movie studios out there want to give Travolta some of your money so he can finally make the next half of LRH's insane vision of the future, I'm sure he's already got the wig in storage.
To do anything less is a disgrace to my entire family line.
Oh, yes.
Until next time, this is Jesse Shade for Awfully Good Movies. And lest I forget to mention to you JoBlo viewers that the Church of Scientology would announce in June 2001 plans for a Battlefield Earth anime TV series, with Dan Grizzly Adams Haggerty as the voice of Turl,
With endless options for renewal.
which I dearly would have loved to have seen happen.
I want to know the connection between the elves and the Nazis.
Thank you for listening. I write just for you, but others hearing this may find things they would argue.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. JoBlo was created by movie fans for movie fans, and we appreciate your support.